So on request, we're making this Vira guide. I know this is coming out after the advanced version, but there was an issue with the video originally, and I have to remake it completely. Some important information about this guide is that it's going to be split off into 3 main sections: super beginner, beginner, and intermediate. Intermediate is going to have its own separate video because of how much information I'm going to be covering in there. But as far as super beginner and beginner, these will still be valuable to any players that are either new to the game or new to fighting games, or just trying to pick up Vira for the first time, as each section will build off of the previous section. Now talking about the type of character that Vira is. Vira is an install character that gets very scary after getting install, so her whole game plan revolves around getting into install in the first place, and then using her install in order to maintain pressure and use very tricky setups and moves in order to actually open up the opponent. Starting with super beginner. In Super Beginner, we're going to cover key fundamental tools that'll help you improve at fighting games in general and just get a general idea of how she works. Her key normals are 5M, 2M, 5L, 2L, and 2H. Her key specials are down EX special, EX DP or forward EX special, light special, and medium back special. Now going into the key normals a little bit more, 5M and 2M are going to be your primary pokes. The most important one is definitely 5M, as it's your farthest reaching poke that is also safe at basically any distance while using 5M. 2M is a little bit better in some cases where it can hit, and 5M is a little bit better in cases where 2M misses. The reason for this is 2M is -3 frames while 5M is -5 frames on block. What that means is on block with a 5M, it's going to be their turn a lot more than it is if you hit a 2M. Or to make that even simpler to understand, after a 5M, it's going to be much easier for the opponent to run up and do whatever they want because they have 5 to 6 extra frames of advantage that they can use in order to actually close the distance and start doing their pressure. Whereas 2M, they only have 3 frames to act out of and start their pressure. For the most part, this is not going to matter at the super beginner level, but it is something to note and maybe even start practicing as a super beginner is be intentional with which type of poke you use and at what distance. But that's just something to keep in mind. For the most part, you are going to just use 5M as it is safe, and most opponents at the very beginner level won't necessarily abuse the positive frames. Now going into 5L and 2L, these are going to be your primary defense tools, and the reason for that is because they are actually some of the fastest moves you have. 2L is going to be your fastest low, while 5L is going to be your fastest mid. 5L is especially good because it's only 5 frames being the fastest move you can do, which will punish poor offense or the overuse of unsafe moves, as well as give you advantage because it is +4 on block. So if you hit this up close, it's going to be your turn now, and you can start acting out of it with 4 frames of advantage. The far version only gives you 1 frame, which you can use up close, but your primary goal is to use that close 5L. 2L is -2 on block, meaning it's not your turn after you hit it on block. So the purpose of 2L is to discourage the opponent from running in and not respecting your defense. If they do not respect your defensive options, they can get hit by the low, and then it will be your turn, allowing you to start your pressure. If they do respect it, you may see them run up and crouch, but if they're not crouching that often, it's a very good way to force them to start doing it. 2H is a tool that is used as a supplementary anti-air, with your primary anti-air being EX DP or your forward EX special. The reason why your EX DP or your forward EX special is going to be your primary anti-air is because, first of all, it's air unblockable, and on top of that, it reaches at a very high distance, making a very consistent anti-air. It also allows you to start running your offense after it lands. The risky thing about this anti-air in particular is that it's -28 on block, so do not use this when they are running at you. Use it when they're trying to jump into you. 2H is a very high reaching move as well, but the reason why you don't want to use this as much is because it is air blockable, and depending on the jump trajectory, it will be inconsistent in hitting the opponent. So use this only when your EX DP is on cooldown. So talking about your EX down special. Your EX down special is one of the best ways to actually start your pressure when you're too far away from the opponent to actually do anything other than EX down special. EX down special is a tracking multi-hitting projectile that gives you a lot of positive frames to act out of. It has kind of a delay, meaning this most likely won't hit, causing a combo, but it's more of a way to cause the opponent to block and then you to run in. So for example, if we're all the way back here, you can use EX down special, and on block you can start running up. You might not make it all the way, so you might end up here, but that's okay because now you have your back medium special and your poke, which are pretty good at that distance, and if you use it a bit closer, you will have even more frames to go into a 6XL and start that pressure that we're going to talk about. Light special is a pretty good poke tool. I recommend using it at distances where your 5M will whiff. So if your 5M whiffs, you can often hit your light special, and this will become kind of important to your game plan later in the guide, which I'll explain when we get to it. But for now, it's a safe way to poke at a pretty decent distance that they may not expect. Medium back special is a very good tool as well. It allows you to start your pressure after it being blocked because it's +2, and it does a dash in as well, that the dash itself can be hit, but once you actually get the hit off, you can start your pressure at +2 frames. For right now, kind of use it as a get in tool, and at around the same distance you can use the poke. So if they start trying to react to the dash, you can kind of catch them out with the poke, especially at very beginner levels. And then the final thing I really want to talk about is getting into your install. As we said earlier, your install is like the most important part of our kit, and we will get a lot more into it in the beginner section. But for now, the main thing you need to focus on is getting into that install. Because if you can't get into the install consistently, then you won't be able to use this character to its full potential. So, speaking of install, how do we get into install consistently? The most consistent way to do it is off of your pressure. And your pressure is going to be 6XL, L, run up throw, U, and medium back special. And just to quickly go over it, since there's not really much to talk about, is most of the time when you're running up to start your pressure, you're going to use 6XL immediately. After this, you can frame trap into L, meaning if they press their fastest button, you will just hit them with your L, which will lead you into a combo if you can hit confirm it. Or it'll leave you in a position, if you can't hit confirm it, where you can go for another 6XL and loop the pressure. And as you can see, the L actually is +1, meaning you can go for another one, which is also +1, and their fastest button at this range will not hit you. You will hit them before their fastest button hits you. So you can kind of do like this thing, where you can do 6XL, L, L. And that's a pretty easy and simple way just to do block string pressure. And then you can just go into like poke or medium back special and get your turn in, or poke them, or try to catch them doing something that they shouldn't be doing. And if they're blocking all of this and they're not reacting, that's when run up throw comes in, and U. When you're not in install, U works pretty well just because it does a run up and then it does the command grab, allowing you to get into your install. And let's say you are in your install, it completely replaces your U button with a new move, which we'll talk about later. But now you can just use a run up throw. When you're in your install for now, just play the same game plan, start doing the same pressure, do your strike throw pressure, and just so I don't leave you guys with nothing, I'm going to show you a very easy hit confirm. The hit confirm that you're going to do for now, just because it's very consistent, is any non-special button into back EX special. So it'll look like this. And the reason why I say use this is just because it has a pretty decent time carrying to the corner and leaves you at a pretty decent distances to start your pressure again. So after a knockdown, you can start your pressure again. Now getting into the beginner section. So to talk about the couple things I wanted to cover in base form is back M special and neutral medium special. As you may have noticed already, and kind of how I talked about earlier, is that your back medium special has a pretty long run-up animation, which allows your opponent to hit you out of the hit before you can even get it. So the way to mix that is on occasion when you think they're going to hit a button, or you notice that they're hitting you out of your back medium special, you can use back light special to hit them, as it does a hit far quicker at the end of the dash, instead of having to do this jump up animation and then strike down. So you can catch the opponent with this on occasion, I would not rely on this as much just because it is -4. So they start their pressure immediately after that. And as you may have seen, is if you're doing it way too close, it's actually -5 when you hit really deep, meaning lights will actually hit you and you will get punished pretty hard for it. Now for neutral M special, the reason why you would use this instead of the poke is if the opponent is trying to take their turn after your poke. So as we already know, your poke is -4. And the opponent can start taking their turn and starting their pressure because of the -4 frames. So if they immediately start acting out of it, trying to hit either a medium or like trying to do a 6XL or trying to get in to abuse those -4 frames, you can use the medium version, which has this follow-up hit which will hit mashers. And especially if you're up close, they will definitely try to take their turn with a light. So you can use the medium version to every once in a while trick them into hitting a button and punishing them for it. For example, if I hit the light version and I try to act out of it, I get hit immediately and I have to just basically give it my turn by holding back. But if they're mashing their fastest button when you're doing this, you can actually catch them with the medium version, as you can see here. So it's a decent way to punish the opponent and make them a little bit more scared of your poke. So getting into stuff related to her installs, the main thing that you will notice is that instead of the command grab, we have this U move, which puts yourself above the opponent. The main advantage of this is that it allows you to kind of go back into your pressure. So if you do like a block string and end it with this, and you can go back into an overhead, you can take your turn back and go back into that pressure and do the strike through again. Just be careful with using this too much, because as someone pointed out to me the other day, the opponent can actually hit you with a crouching H before you can actually hit them with the overhead. So if I try to do this, I get hit by the crouching H. So the way you can avoid it is by jumping back, but so far I haven't really found too many ways to work around this. So just be careful with using this too much, but it is a pretty good way to even start movement within the air. The main thing I just wanted to show you is that you can use this overhead to steal turns back. Now getting into some interesting things that is not related to your U button, but is specific to install. Install actually has air dash. Most characters don't have any air movement, but she does while in her install. You can actually neutral jump and then jump forward, and while you're doing this, you can actually press buttons. In my opinion, one of your better buttons is your U, as it sweeps pretty far and leaves you with positive frames up close, and depending on how deep you hit it, you can get more or less. As you saw there, I got 5, and here I get 11. It is pretty decent. If you want a little bit faster move, you have L as well, but it doesn't give you as many positive frames, and then also H is a pretty good one as well, as it sweeps forward. Typically I don't recommend jumping too often, but with Vira, you can mix up your jumps and pressure the opponent with weird angles that they may not expect, just because you have this air dash. So use it a little bit more often, but it's not a super important tool. Just as a side note, one thing I have noticed is that in the corner, you can kind of neutral jump and cause a reaction out of the opponent. Maybe they'll whiff an anti-air or EX DP on reaction, but you can just hold back and then make it whiff. Another thing you can do is you can just jump over them and do a cross up. In this case, depending on how low to the ground you actually jump, you will kind of sweep them. If you do it too high, it whiffs, but if you do somewhat close to the ground, as you saw earlier, it does actually hit, which gives you plus frames and allows you to take your turn on the opposite side. Something new that I want to talk about that I typically don't like to talk about is your invincible reversal. So Vira gets a different and new invincible reversal that isn't your EXDP. Just to quickly cover what an invincible reversal is for people that may not know, it's a move that has invincible frames pretty early into the animation, which allows you to use it to get the opponent off of you. So if they're running pressure and there's maybe, like, let's say a 1 to 2 frame gap within their pressure, instead of getting frame trapped, you can use it to get them off of you. The reason why I say not to use this as much as a beginner player is because good players and intermediate players will notice you abusing these tools, and they will instead just block, and a lot of these tools are very unsafe. The reason why I'm bringing it up now, however, is because at the beginner level, a lot of players will not know how to punish this correctly, as it's a safe invincible reversal that you can use to get them off of you. You may notice that there's a pretty long pause between the two hits, meaning that if they block the first one, they can't on reaction dodge the second one, leaving you at -7 and in their face, meaning you get punished for a lot of damage. That being said, it's still a very valuable tool to know when trying to get the opponent off of you. And if the opponent doesn't know to dodge, it is actually pretty safe, because the second move puts them at -6 and at a pretty far distance, meaning their fastest move is around 6 and it won't reach. So it's a safe reversal tool that you can use to get them off of you. And in my opinion, it's actually pretty safe when using in neutral just to catch them out, because the first move doesn't have that slowdown when it whiffs into the air. So you can kind of use it as a way to hit them. It is not the best just because it's -6, but it is something that you can kind of keep in mind. So as far as the pressure goes, it's going to be the exact same pressure as before, but every now and then I would encourage you to experiment with using your U movement to either start pressure or just use it during pressure. This will allow you to just steal turns with the plus frames that you get on the follow-up hits. And one last thing I do want to mention is that if you are pretty far and you kind of want to start your pressure and you're worried about getting hit on the way when running in, you can mix up this really fast dash in with a jump back, or you can press down and drop out of it, or you can jump and go at this upwards angle that can confuse the opponent. So at certain distances you can just jump and then start doing those like jump in moves that I showed you. So there's a lot of options you can use from like mid screen to kind of mix the opponent with your movement. For your hit confirm, I would say there's one thing I kind of want you to start using, but it's not super important. I still believe that not having combos is not the end of the world for you yet, but one thing that you might want to start incorporating is while in the corner, both in install and non-install, your better hit confirm while in the corner is going to be your EX neutral special. So you're going to hit a button and go into EX neutral special, which causes a wall bounce and allows you to combo pretty easily. So for now, I think it's okay that if you don't really have a combo off of this. Of course, you can kind of freestyle a combo when you do hit confirm it, but this is a far better hit confirm to actually practice, as it leads into more damage and has a lot more options off of it. But for the most part, this one's a bit better hit confirm, as it's a lot more consistent. So I will be putting a combo section at the end of this video. It's very basic stuff, and if you want to get more into the nitty-gritty stuff, I do have the advanced video up already. The intermediate section, or the advanced video, is going to go into a lot of interesting topics that are pretty hard to use and understand if you are new to fighting games or new to the character. So just get comfortable with the character, get comfortable with using her buttons, get comfortable with using her tricky air movement, get comfortable with these tools, and then you can start looking at the advanced once you feel pretty comfortable with it. The combos themselves, I would say, do not worry about them too much. The game is not about combos. I do have a video up talking about how to use training mode properly, so please check that out. If you have any questions, please ask anywhere. But I will leave you with these combos just so that you have them. Don't stress about them though.